everybody. Welcome to this month's Kidneys in the Kitchen. I'm Megan Craig, Director of Programs for the National Kidney Foundation of Illinois, and I am joined, as always, by a beautiful dietitian who is going to talk with us today about staying healthy during the holidays.
Yes. Hi everyone. My name is Tisa Ross, and I am a renal dietitian for DaVita. Thanks for having me.
Awesome. So, the holidays, a fun time, right?
Yes, one of my favorite times, actually.
Definitely. So what do kidney patients need to know so that they can stay healthy during the holidays?
Well, I think during this time, one of the main things to really keep in mind is portion control. Also, what foods that they should eat,
Sure.
As well as making sure that they avoid high potassium foods and high sodium foods and high phosphorus foods.
Yes, the potassium, phosphorus, and sodium. We're kind of at war with those on this program.
Yes.
So.
So I think, around the holiday time, it's a really fun time. It's a time where people spend time with their families and they want to cook. And it's also a time for the sometime foods. And we talk about sometime foods because sometimes people will say, well, I have this sometimes and this sometimes. But you have to keep in mind that when you have a sometimes food all the time, it's not a sometimes food. So it's very important to understand what is a sometimes food, and a sometimes food would be now during the holidays or the holiday season is a time you can kind of have a sometimes food. But with that being said, it's really important that you make sure that you're looking at some of the foods you're preparing as well as some of the foods that you're eating while you're out and about and at different parties.
Definitely.
So today we have, first thing we want to talk about is meat of choice. So when we're talking about a meat of choice, we want to choose something that has lower sodium, usually has lower fat, as well as something tasty, and a meat that wouldn't be processed. It would be fresh.
Okay. I know when I went to the grocery store today, I picked up this roaster chicken.
Yes.
That came completely like this. All I did was take the lid off, and
Yes.
it looked like this.
And this was low sodium, correct?
It was no sodium added.
No sodium.
Yes.
That's awesome. That's really good. Yes. And so for something like this is something that, especially for a holiday party, if you want to make some type of dip or you just want to serve it as is, this is something that would definitely be a meat of choice. Along with this would also be other fresh meats like turkey, like chicken, like beef brisket or fish. But when we talk about meats that aren't necessarily the best choice, it would be processed meats, perhaps a ham or something that had a lot more fat and sodium.
Yeah, ham is kind of known for its sodium, right? That's sort of
Yes.
the thing.
And the thing about it is that what a lot of people don't realize, even if you don't add sodium to a lot of these meats, what happens is that the sodium is inside of the meat already.
Yeah, so if this had been a sodium added roaster chicken, that means they actually inject it right in, right? Or do they rub it on the outside?
Well, they would rub it on the outside. Sometimes people inject it in, but also naturally meat has sodium in it anyway. Just like when we're running outside in the summertime and sometimes we catch a little bit of our sweat, it's a little salty because internally all animal products have some form of salt.
Okay, that makes sense. And even though this is a no sodium added, would the skin still be an okay part of this to eat, or would it not be as good maybe as the regular meat? Or?
Well, the skin wouldn't be as healthy as the other meat because the skin would have a lot of the fat and the sodium and things of that sort. And again, when we eat food, we want to eat for the taste, and so the taste would be in the meat portion as well as the protein, which is very important because when we have kidney disease, we definitely want to make sure that we're having enough protein, depending on what stages you're in, and also lowering sodium as well as potassium.
Can you remind us which stages? I know it's different. So some stages you want to lessen protein and some stages you want to heighten protein.
Yes. So for chronic kidney disease, stages 1 through 4, you want to lower protein. That helps the kidney to rest and possibly regain some function, or really what happens is the function doesn't continue to decline.
Okay.
And then when you have stage 5, end stage renal disease, what happens is that you want to increase the protein.
Okay.
Because that is dialysis.
Okay, gotcha. Okay.
All right, so today we have a few fun items here, a lot of different seasonings. One thing that's important that we're going to talk about are the different seasonings that you can use when you are seasoning your food, because we want to stick away from just the salt, and sometimes it's really boring when we just pick certain brands that are just salt-free seasoning. So it's really fun when you can kind of have your loose seasonings here, and then you can kind of correlate those and mix and match those to have a new seasoning that you would like for your foods. Another thing that I like to do during the holidays with loose seasonings to kind of make it fun at a holiday party is, having a little game. You can have a lot of different loose seasonings together, and with you and your guests, you can kind of make different seasoning packs and they can take it with them. That kind of loosens up just eating and sitting around the TV and things of that sort, as well as some of the anxiety that may come when you're at some of the parties and people are eating mac and cheese and potato salad, and you're like, I don't want to eat that. And so if you're hosting the party, you can have different things that you can do to make it a lot more fun. So that's something we're going to talk about today. So first things first, we talked about the meat of choice, like we said before, having the turkey or chicken, as well as fish or beef. And then the second thing we want to talk about are some of the renal-friendly dishes that we could prepare, or things to pick when we are out and about or having a party for our family and friends.
Sure.
So first thing, let's talk about, what are some of the favorite things we like to have during the holiday?
Potatoes, mashed potatoes.
Mashed
My
potatoes.
mom's mashed potatoes.
Yes, mashed potatoes. They're yummy, they're good, they're filling. So a couple of things with mashed potatoes. Now, that's when we're talking about the sometimes foods. Because, can you have a small portion of mashed potatoes? Sure. But some of the things you want to do beforehand, you want to make sure that you're following the soaking methods for your potatoes to make sure that you're getting rid of some of the potassium. So usually if you follow a standard soaking method, and you can Google that, I think that should be on the website. Yep. You can remove about 50% of the potassium. So that's really nice. But again, we don't want to go overboard. So we would stick to a standard portion, maybe 3 ounces or so. Now, another thing you can do if you want to maybe indulge a little bit more is use something like your cauliflower. And so for today, we chose to show the rice cauliflower.
Yeah. We can get kind of closer up on that. But as you can see, it's just really sort of finely cut cauliflower, which I know we've talked about before on this show, but having it cut finely like that makes it mashable, right?
Yes, it makes it very mashable. It's a lot better. I definitely tried to originally when I first did cauliflower mashed potatoes, I tried to do it without rice cauliflower, and I used
just
fresh,
like a whole.
Right. It was a disaster.
Your kitchen must have just
it was
cauliflower.
Yeah, I boiled it, and then it just didn't get soft enough, and it just wasn't really great. So this is really good, especially if you have the frozen. You can kind of like put it in the refrigerator and let it kind of defrost a little bit, and then we have recipes that you can follow for that. But what happens is it's very soft, very mashable, and then you would pretty much add a lot of your ingredients that you would use for mashed potatoes anyway, and you'd be surprised. You could even put it a little bit in the food processor, and you would be surprised at how smooth it is and how nice it is and yummy.
Yeah, and we've talked before about, so anyone who's watched before knows that frozen vegetables are just as nutritious as fresh.
Yes, they are, because what we have to realize when we're talking about vegetables is that when they first pick vegetables, when they have frozen, they just flash freeze them, and it kind of locks in the nutrients right there, as opposed to waiting and it's being shipped somewhere or canned, and then some of the nutrients are being compromised by heat or by different chemicals and things of that sort. Okay?
Great.
Now, another thing that's really important that we want to talk about is fluid control.
Always an issue, especially for our kidney patients on dialysis.
Yes. Fluid control is very important for a lot of reasons. Number one, even talking about having certain vegetables and things that we like, what happens is we have to keep in mind that there are fluids in food. So there are fluids in your vegetables and your fresh vegetables and your fruits, as well as the fluids that we want to have just particularly at a party. So here, what we have here are different cups that we brought. And this shows you the different sizes. Now, one thing that you all can always use is pretty much somewhere on the cup, it'll show you the ounces for the particular cup.
Yeah, this is 5 ounces.
Yes.
It was on the bag that the cups came in. Yeah.
All right, so this is a 5-ounce one, and this should have one on here too.
9.
A 9-ounce one, okay.
It was on the bag.
And this one is an 18-ounce one.
Okay, that's a lot of ounces.
Yeah, that's a lot of ounces, but I like to use this one because this is something that people typically grab when they're having parties and when they go to parties, so you definitely need to know. And what you can look for, a lot of the cups this size, you can Google and it'll show you like at the different curves. Those represent the different amounts that you can have. Like they'll show you different amounts for 3 ounces and 6 ounces, 9 ounces, and thus forth. And then they'll also show you recommendations even too for alcohol, like what would be a recommended amount to not go over. So it's really nice.
Great.
So fluids is something that you definitely want to keep in mind because you want to make sure that you're adding all of that together so you're not, a person is not being fluid overloaded. Okay?
Yeah, you never want to be fluid overloaded, but especially you don't want to spend your holidays being fluid overloaded. You're already overloaded with family at that point. So.
Exactly. And so then going back to some of the fun dishes. So again, when we're thinking about some of the fun dishes, we talked about mashed potatoes, we talked about the cauliflower mashed potatoes, but then there are also dishes that are traditional to a holiday season, like green beans, which are totally fine to have. A lot of the other ones are most of your vegetable dishes. If you're having like a casserole, if you're having like broccoli, what are some of the other dishes that you like?
So we do always have a green bean casserole, but I'll say it has a lot of cream of mushroom soup in it.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So then that's not gonna that wouldn't fly just because of the sodium
alone
and the dairy. But you could have your cornbread dressing.
Yeah.
That's something you can still have.
Awesome.
Also pasta salads, those are good that you can have. You can cut up vegetables and have your pasta. That would be definitely renal friendly and low sodium. Anything
That's
else?
right. We just want to make sure we're using, if you're on dialysis, you want to make sure you're using not the whole wheat version of things, right? You want to use the white version.
Typically, some of the recommendations have changed.
Okay.
Yeah, so now, sometimes it just depends on your phosphorus levels. For people who are having very high phosphorus, then their physicians may tell them to or dietitians may tell them to, maybe back away from just the whole wheat. But
Sure.
we are pushing whole wheat because it's good for your fiber. And the studies have shown that when it's a natural source, your body is only absorbing 50% of the phosphorus as opposed to if it's a processed source. So if you're eating foods that are processed, like processed meats, that's why we don't recommend processed meats. What happens is your body's going to absorb 90 to 95% of the phosphorus. But for natural sources, it's going to be 50%. So we do still like to encourage whole wheat products.
Healthy products.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
And just to be clear, when we're talking about processed meats, we're talking about like lunch meats, that kind of
Yes.
thing? Okay.
Like lunch meats, your deli meats. So a lot of times people get confused because what'll happen is they'll look at something like this, a rotisserie chicken, and they'll say, is that a deli meat? No, that's a chicken that was made maybe perhaps at the deli or around the deli, but that's a fresh meat. But when we're talking about processed meats, we're saying when you go to the deli and you're asking for the turkey that's behind there, the smoked turkey, the salami, things of that sort, those would be processed meats.
Okay.
Or even if you're in the grocery store and you are by the cheese section, sometimes they have different lunch meats and things that you can purchase. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and anything in casing, right?
Yes.
So like hot dogs, brats.
Yes, Polish sausages, yes.
All stuff to remember is very heavily processed.
Yes, because a lot of people barbecue around the holidays as well. Because everyone's not, some people go to warmer climates, or even sometimes in the wintertime, people still barbecue. So that's something.
I would love to be in a warmer climate right now. So anyway.
And so also with that being said, we have our desserts. The good thing is a lot of the desserts that we typically enjoy are renal friendly, like apple pie, like sometimes we'll have sugar cookies,
Sure.
pound cakes. Any specific desserts you like?
Oh, it's the apple pie for me. Or, well, this probably, again, I'm just throwing out terrible examples, but we love a good chocolate pie in my
Chocolate
house.
pie,
Yeah,
okay.
like
So,
a French silk, chocolate mousse kind of pie. It's
see.
just chock full of dairy, so I'm sure it's not what we're going
It is,
for.
and then the chocolate pie would have phosphorus in it for patients that are on dialysis. Also, another one that people like is pumpkin pie and sweet potato pie.
Oh, yeah.
And I can say pumpkin pie has a lot of potassium. So I wouldn't recommend pumpkin pie. For sweet potato pie, you can follow some of the same guidelines that you use for potatoes, with soaking the sweet potatoes to help remove some of the potassium. But you can also have cookies. You can have, like I said, a lot of the apple pies or different type of pies, just avoiding the dairy and the high potassium, like banana pudding. You definitely will want to avoid
probably good for renal friendly.
Yes.
I have a quick question about soaking the potatoes.
Yes.
The reason people love sweet potato pie is because it's so flavorful. Does soaking the potatoes only take out the potassium, or does it affect the flavor?
It doesn't affect the flavor. It just takes out the potassium.
Wonderful.
So you won't really be able to tell, and it won't mess up your recipe, as a lot of people are like, that's going to mess my recipe up. No, your recipe will still be great, and your food will taste great. It's just taking out the potassium.
Okay, wonderful.
Yep. And then, so another thing to think about when we are out and about and going to different parties, because if the party is at your house, you can control the food. When you're out and about and you're at different parties, some of the things that you may want to do, you may want to make sure you're using a smaller plate for some of the sometimes foods that you may want to indulge in, having the smaller cups, even maybe bringing some smaller cups, because it's really easy to say, hey, you're having a party, what can I bring? And then you like, I'll bring different size cups. And that's something that can help, because that way you don't want to just have one cup in your pocket, but you can
that's that weird lady who carries around a cup.
Exactly. But you can have your bring cups, and they're like, oh, thank you. Say, yeah, it's holiday time. I want to make sure that I'm having good portions, and we're promoting health. As well as when we think about, if you're on dialysis, your binders, you can carry your binders in a little Altoids canister.
Oh, sure.
That's something cool. So when you're out, it's just looking like you're popping a mint, instead of bringing out the binders and people ask you questions like, what's going on here?
Mint container. Good idea.
Yeah, so that's something that you can do. As well as not always focusing just on the food. So the games are something that's really fun to do around the holidays. So one thing I like to say when I have parties and when I go to parties, when you're having a party, you can kind of, think of game ideas and have games for people to play. But also when you go to parties, you can say, hey, let me be in charge of the games. And that way you're just not sitting around looking at foods that you may want to eat or want to eat more of. You're kind of being mobile, and you're moving around and thinking of other things to do. So that's why I really like the seasoning game. I really like, that's something that people can take away. You can just have different seasonings and make it like a game, like, oh, I want to have maybe something like a Caribbean pack, or I want to make something that's more American style seasonings. And then that also introduces different seasonings to your friends and family who may say, oh, I've never used curry before, or I've never used basil, or different seasonings that they have. You can introduce that to them, as well as most of the seasonings. They are really good with inflammation, with reducing inflammation, like turmeric and things of that sort. Okay?
It's almost like a craft.
Yeah.
Right? Like a takeaway. That's great.
Yeah, that would be really nice. Also, some games. What are some games you like to play with your family?
We love to play anything that's like a word game. So where you like can say you have to try to guess certain words, or you can't say certain words, or word-based games are our thing.
That's
for sure.
really fun. So I like those games. I like word-based games, charades. Sometimes I'll put together a crossword puzzle to have about the holidays or just about the family. Those are some things that I think are really fun and that you can do to really spiff up your party and make it not just about food, because whether we're on a dialysis or having chronic kidney disease, whatever we're doing, we want to make sure that we're eating healthy around the holidays, all of us. And we want to make sure that we're following our diets, because a lot of times people may have diabetes or other things, and then they don't want to just focus on the food and overeat and things of that sort.
Sure, of course, it's a good idea.
Yes. So, what are some things you would say that you think that people like to do at holiday parties?
I know the games are a big thing. I mean, just chatting, really. I mean, I think part of the great thing about the holidays is it gives you a chance to see people you may not get to see a lot throughout the rest of the year. So, we're talking about ways, of course, to sort of hide that you're taking big pills or things like that, but it is a good opportunity also to advocate for, kidney disease or your health, to just sort of let people be more informed about what's going on with you.
Yes, I think so too. I think definitely it's a time to have different dishes that they might not have normally tasted, to see like, oh, that's really good, especially when you have your family, because a lot of times with family it's really rough, because a lot of times what you'll do is you'll be making something for yourself, and then you'll also be making something for your family, and you're making 2 and 3 different meals. But it's a time to introduce different kidney friendly dishes that people will say, oh, this is actually really good, I may want to incorporate that, and it's low calorie and it's very healthy for me. I would also like to say, we're talking about the games, which is really fun, but also just having a time where you almost kind of maybe transition from the eating and just say, this is our social time, and like this is our time where we get to know people, and like you were saying, and this is our time where we're going to do like an icebreaker, and then that way that kind of transitions everyone over into another room or something like that.
Away from the potential problem areas.
Yes.
Probably better for everyone, honestly.
Yes.
I do want to just remind everyone that our website is available at all times. You can find a bunch of recipes. You can order our free cookbook. That's nkfi.org, like National Kidney Foundation Illinois.org. We have lots of references on here, things that you can use when you're planning your holiday meals together with your family. So, Tisa, thank you so much for being with us.
Thanks for having me.
Really appreciate it.
Fun.
And thank you all for joining us once again. You're probably seeing this as our last Kidneys in the Kitchen of the year, so we'll hope that you join us again next year. Thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye.